Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Hydrock presentation. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all staying safe at this time. This is the second in a host of Hydrock webinars that all disciplines are covering over the next couple of months. If you want to find out a bit more information about what Hydrock are doing, go to the Hydrock website. I'm pleased you could join us. This particular webinar is about the fire safety bill and what it means for you and your building. There is quite a lot of information to take in during this webinar, so I will take my time to ensure that you try and get as much as possible out of it. It should take about 30 minutes. There will be time for questions at the end as well. If you have a question, I would appreciate it if you could put your name and the company you work for at the start so I can understand who I'm talking to and direct it to yourself. So without further ado, we'll just get into the presentation. Just put this up now. So, as I said before, this is the fire safety bill and what it means for you and your building. I'll take a bit of time to introduce myself. My name is Marc Pawson. I'm the Technical Director for Fire Engineering in Hydrock Fire, one of three, and I have a joint responsibility for fire safety across the UK, and I'm based in the Glasgow office. My contact details are there. You can contact me via the website as well, where my contact details are. A bit of structure to this presentation will be as follows. Firstly, we'll do an introduction. I'll talk a wee bit about Hydrock, because why not? That's why you're here. A bit about the timeline and significant events that have led to the fire safety bill, and then we'll discuss the fire safety bill itself as well. We'll go on to talk about any future developments potentially for you or your building, or any buildings that you may manage, and then we'll go into a conclusion after that. Like any good fire engineer does, I want to set some limitations right at the start of the presentation. We will not be responding to any questions relating to the ongoing public inquiry. The territory of this discussion will be England and Wales only, as MHCLG has no governance in Scotland and Northern Ireland. I will not be responding to any questions relating to the testing and certification of cladding on external wall systems, as this will be covered in phase 2 of the PI. So I just hope that's clear to you. So, this presentation aims to provide an update to all stakeholders with an interest in fire safety design and management in the UK. We will discuss the following: the significant developments since Grenfell Tower fire and Lacanal, the government guidance, new industry requirements, the fire safety bill and what it means for the industry, and the future, what the bill and the new legislation may mean for you and your building. In this section, I will give a brief introduction to Hydrock as a company. We are a multidisciplinary engineering design consultancy with over 450 staff operating from 17 UK offices, including Manchester, London, Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, Glasgow and Leeds. So we cover the UK nationally. We have quite a breadth of specific engineering services. You can see there, I'll let you look at that for just a second. But you can find out again more on what we do and how we do it at the Hydrock website. A couple of special mentions, I suppose: smart energy and sustainability, structural and fire. Hydrock's fire safety division was founded in 2017 and now has 25 fire safety professionals working in many of the UK's regional capitals. Those are Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, more recently Glasgow, where I'm based, Leeds, London and Manchester. So that's the Hydrock Fire Division. Our team has a broad range of expertise, ranging from fire engineering, fire risk management, nuclear and industrial fire safety, expert witness, structural engineering, specialist services which include CFD, blast analysis and evacuation modelling. I'll now just go through a couple of brief projects that we've worked on as a fire division. So the first one is Hunslet Road in Leeds. This is a residential development consisting of 315 homes, which include commercial and retail. We provided fire engineering, fire risk management and CFD modelling throughout the REBA stages. This is Hangar 86 for Dyson in Wiltshire. This was quite a fast-paced conversion of hangars from a semi-derelict former military hangar into a modern and contemporary workspace for research and development, specifically for the Dyson electric vehicle project. We provided fire engineering and structural engineering through the REBA stages on this one as well. This project is a University West of England engineering building, which features engine test cells, large wind tunnels, and a dedicated learning space to accommodate a wide range of engineering disciplines. Again, we provided fire engineering throughout the REBA stages and CFD modelling, including Monte Carlo. Next one is interesting. This is the Institute of Advanced Automotive Propulsion Systems in Bath, or known as IAPS. This is a global centre for excellence to deliver transformational research and development for automotive propulsion technologies. We provided fire engineering and fire risk management services for this particular building as well. So those are just a few of the Hydrock fire engineering projects I just wanted to cover. Now we'll get into the main body of the presentation. First, I want to show a significant timeline of events. And the reason that I do this is because I want to understand how we managed to get to the place we are today with the fire safety bill, and I want you to understand that as well. Now, this timeline is over the last 3 years, is quite a busy timeline, and we've done that purposefully. You'll notice on this timeline that there are green notes, and they are identified as advice issued by the government. And there are significant fires that are spread via the external wall, and they're identified via a flame. As I said, this slide is busy, and that is purposeful, as this is what building owners, building designers, and fire safety professionals have had to navigate over the last 3 years, which has been quite challenging for some. You will notice at the start of the timeline there is a Lacanal fire back in 2009. The reason for showing this is that there was no government response in the change to fire safety legislation, even though it was a fatal fire which spread across the cladding. All the government advice came swiftly after Grenfell, and quite rightly so. The advice offered by the government during the last 3 years has been consolidated into one advice note, which was issued on the 20th of January 2020, and we'll look at this in further depth during the course of this presentation. Some omissions from this timeline, such as the Grenfell Phase 1 report and the government response, and the Judith Hackett report and the government response, will be discussed next. The Grenfell Phase 1 report was published by Sir Martin Moore-Bick in October 2019. The Phase 1 report focused on the factual narrative of these events on the night of the 14th of the 6th. Now, there was a host of recommendations throughout this report, but we'll only focus on the ones that inform the fire safety bill. Some of those recommendations are that the information relating to materials and methods of construction used in external walls of high-rise residential buildings should be made available to the Fire and Rescue Service. The plans and floor layouts of high-rise residential buildings should also be made available to the Fire and Rescue Service, and the provision of premises information boxes as well. A review of the evacuation of high-rise residential buildings, including the equipment to provide and enable firefighters to send an evacuation signal to whole or a selected part of the building, is recommended. And a recommendation on the inspection of all fire doors and self-closing devices between dwellings and communal areas. There was a government response to the Grenfell Phase 1 inquiry reported in January 2020. Again, there was a host of recommendations, but we'll focus on the ones that are relevant. Some of those are MHCLG banned the use of combustible materials on new high-rise blocks of flats. The Home Office proposed an upcoming fire safety bill with the aim to clarify the scope of the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005. The Home Office and MHCLG have already formed a steering group together with the National Fire Chief Council to review the stay put evacuation policy. It also included proposals to introduce a new type of alarm system to assist the Fire and Rescue Service to evacuate such buildings. And MHCLG has also recommended that all fire doors, including their closers, should be routinely checked or inspected by suitably qualified, competent professionals. A panel of experts, led by Dame Judith Hackett, were commissioned by the UK government to carry out an independent review of the building regulations and fire safety in July 2017. The final report was issued by Dame Judith Hackett on May 2018. She found that the current regulatory system covering high-rise, multiple-occupied residential buildings was not fit for purpose, leaving room for those who wish to take shortcuts to do so. She made a number of recommendations in that report. We'll go through those, some of them that are relating to the fire safety bill. And the main one is to create a golden thread of information about each high-rise residential building. This is the obligation to create a digital record for new high-rise residential buildings from initial design intent through to construction, and including any changes that occur throughout occupation. This package of building information will be used by duty holders to demonstrate to the regulator the safety of the building throughout its life cycle. A joint competent authority comprising of local building authority standards, Fire and Rescue Service and the Health and Safety Executive to oversee better management of safety risks in these buildings across their entire life cycle. A recommendation was a set of rigorous and more demanding duty holder roles and responsibilities to ensure a stronger focus on building safety, as well as more rigorous enforcement powers, which also means there are more serious penalties for those who choose to game the system and place residents at risk. She also recommended ensuring continuous improvement in best practice through professionals, through membership of international bodies, and a higher standard of building construction. We do know that many of our construction clients are currently implementing measures that meet some of the spirit of these objectives, such as the Golden Thread approach. These measures involve them documenting and recording installation and maintenance requirements of both active and passive fire safety systems. These measures require the involvement of fire safety professionals to validate the standard of work carried out and the competency of those carried out. So there are those out there that are trying to do that at the moment. The government responded to the Building a Safer Future consultation, and that was issued in April 2020, just some weeks ago, by MHCLG. Some of those recommendations are that the government would create a more effective regulatory and accountability framework to provide greater oversight of the building industry, including a new building safety regulator. It recommended a more rigorous approach to accountability during the design and construction process, including a gateway process and the provision of a safety case. The safety case should refer to the totality of building safety information and include all supporting evidence identifying how fire and structural risks are being managed. The Home Office's upcoming fire safety bill will aim to clarify the scope of the regulatory reform fire safety order. The Home Office and MHCLG have already formed a steering group together with the National Fire Chief Council. The steering group met for the first time on the 18th of December 2019 and have inputted into a scope and commissioning to research the stay-put evacuation method. It also included proposals to introduce a new type of fire alarm system to assist the Fire and Rescue Service to evacuate such high-rise buildings. The industry has also responded to assist mortgage lenders with asset valuation, taking into account the advice offered by MHCLG. This is in a form of an EWS1 external wall fire risk assessment. This was introduced by the Royal Institute Chartered Surveyors, UK Finance, and the Building Societies Association for valuation purposes, carried out on buildings over 18 metres or where there is a specific concern. The EWS1 form must take cognizance of the regulation and guidance available at the time of assessment. As discussed earlier, there was plenty of advice offered by MHCLG. We want to focus on 3 of those notes, and particularly Advice Note 14, which was for non-ACM walls, issued in December 2017. This encourages building owners of residential buildings over 18 metres that do not have wall systems incorporating ATM to seek their own professional advice if they're unsure about fire safety. Advice Note 21 was specifically about balconies on residential buildings. This was issued in June 2019, and this provides advice for owners and residents of residential buildings with balconies, regardless of building height, and summarises the risk of combustible materials and what a resident can do if they have concerns. A consolidated advice note was published by the MHCLG on the 20th of January 2020. This advice note supersedes all previous advice notes. The advice relates to the assessment and remediation measures for existing high-rise residential buildings with ACM. as well as reviewing and assessing other cladding systems, their fire safety, external fire spread, and the management of key fire safety risks and updates to assess the external wall systems. The difference in Advice Note 14 and Advice Note 21 and the Consolidated Advice Note is that the Consolidated Advice Note states that the fire risk presented by external walls should be taken into consideration regardless of building height. The MHCLG determined that the clearest way to demonstrate that materials in the external wall system do not present a fire risk is to confirm that they are made from materials using Class A2 or better, or previously referred to as limited combustibility. So that is a lot of information that is fed into the fire safety bill. So what does that mean? The Fire Safety Bill is an amendment to the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005, specifically an amendment to Article 6, which is the application to premises. It currently states in Article 6 that the Regulatory Reform Order does not apply in relation to A, domestic premises, except to the extent mentioned in Article 31, which is the power to invoke prohibition. This will now be changed under the Fire Safety Bill to say this order does not apply in relation to A, domestic premises, except to the extent mentioned in paragraph 1A, where a building contains 2 or more domestic premises. So that is a clear change. It is now no longer applicable to domestic dwellings, but what it's saying is if you have a building with 2 or more dwellings, the Regulatory Reform Order is now applicable. It goes on further to say the things in which this order applies include the building structure and the external walls and common parts, the doors between domestic premises and common parts. And with reference to the external walls, this includes doors or windows in those walls and anything attached to the exterior of those walls, including balconies. So that's quite a clear change. The second part of the Fire Safety Bill is the power to change premises to which the Fire Safety Order applies. The relevant authority may, by regulation, amend the Regulatory Reform Order. The relative authority in England means the Secretary of State, and in relation to Wales means the Welsh Ministers. This change means that the government will have the power to change the type of premises to which the order applies, should it see fit. So the implications, what does this mean for existing buildings and for new buildings? What does it mean for existing building owners, architects, designers and contractors? If you are an existing building owner or a responsible person as identified under Article 3 of the RRO, you have to consider the risks of fire posed by your external wall, and you're also responsible for considering the condition of fire doors between dwellings and communal areas. If you're an architect or a building designer, you must take cognizance of the fire risk posed by the external wall regardless of building height. And that is to say, you may design a building that is under 18 metres and currently meets the guidance available, and you put on combustible materials to your external wall. However, once that building is occupied, to which the RRO is then applied, someone may deem your external wall as a fire risk and indicate that remedial works are required. Therefore, you should consider it at design stage. If you're a contractor, similarly, the choice of materials and construction methodology should now be taken into cognizance for the same reasons. You have to consider the fire risks of whatever material you put on your external wall, regardless of building height. So the future, and what does it hold for us as fire safety professionals and building designers or occupiers? As discussed earlier, the government are making a change to approved document B. The Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick, made an announcement on the 3rd of April 2020 regarding the introduction of the new building guidance, and he made some bullet points. Those were that residential building height threshold for sprinklers will be reduced to 11 metres, that wayfinding signage for fire service in residential buildings will be required for any building above any residential building above 11 metres. and the potential for a new evacuation and alert system technology, allowing the fire and rescue service to take control of the fire alarm within a residential building. The introduction date and the transition period for these items are still to be confirmed, and it is unclear how these changes will affect current buildings going through planning. Fire suppression. So there are some changes in the future. Residential building height threshold for sprinklers, as discussed, will be reduced to 11 metres. In 2016, the Welsh Government introduced Regulation 37A that requires domestic premises of any height to have a sprinkler system. I suppose I wonder in the industry, is this a missed opportunity? Hydrock have been made aware by many of developers that the general public are now more aware of fire safety within residential high-rise buildings. They've reported to be asking developers and builders about sprinkler systems installed prior to purchase, and this has led to some of the clients making a decision to install sprinklers irrespective of statutory requirement. Wayfinding. As recommended, MHCLG, there is a consultation for wayfinding to be improved for the fire and rescue service. This will be a requirement for all residential buildings over 11 metres, and the guidance is designed mainly to assist the fire and rescue service during firefighting and evacuation. The stay put policy. The National Fire Chief Council are currently reviewing the stay put policy. MHCLG are reviewing the use of a fire alarm system with fire service activation capability. And there is a discussion about the enhanced fire detection and alarm systems available to residential dwellings capable of complex cause and effect protocols just by raising the grade. And again, just with the consultation about the stay put and whether it's effective or not. The stay put policy is where the occupant of the resident of the fire origin evacuates only. This has been in place for more than 50 years and is generally accepted as being extremely effective. In rare circumstances where the fire-resistant construction has been breached, full evacuation is necessary, and this is usually instigated by the fire service. If the stay put policy is revoked, this would have consequences for building designers where stairs or escape routes must be accommodated for simultaneous evacuation upon a general alarm. This may also have implications for the fire service, who in the worst case would conduct an extensive search and rescue operation to ensure all occupants have been evacuated to the building. The alternative would be that the introduction of more onerous management systems to ensure all building occupants have been accounted for as well. Our opinion is that the stay put policy is still a viable strategy where non-combustible materials are installed on the external facade and the internal compartmentation meets the required standard. Building threshold heights. As discussed before, the Building Amendment Regulations 2018 has put a ban on all combustible materials on residential buildings over 18 metres. There's currently a government consultation that may reduce the combustible ban threshold to 11 metres. And with the new fire safety bill that will require a fire risk assessment on any residential building regardless of height, what does this mean for specific building materials, and especially timber? The recent test carried out by BRE on high pressure laminates on behalf of MHCLG was inconclusive and required further work, which was recommended in intermediate and larger scale testing. With the suggestion of limited combustibility on residential external walls irrespective of building height as stated in the MHCLG consolidated guidance document issued in January, doubt must be placed on the use of timber within external wall construction on any residential building, given that the quantification of risk is subjective to the fire safety professional carrying out the risk assessment. In the broader landscape, it is also noted that many residential projects, including CLT and other types of engineered timber, have been delayed as concerns around external fire facades are being resolved. Hybrid solutions are being considered, but the industry needs to embark on testing to provide comfort that the timber construction materials are suitable for use on residential or high-rise design. Fire risk management. As stated in the Dame Judith Hackett report, building owners cannot pass on accountability to the fire safety manager. Fire safety design intent should be maintained throughout the building lifetime through the appointment of a suitably competent professional, i.e. fire risk managers, fire risk assessors or fire engineers. And fire risk management should be considered at the design stage through fire engineering professionals. So, a quick conclusion then. For the fire safety bill, existing building owners and responsible persons now require a fire risk assessment on external walls, including openings such as windows, doors and balconies. Existing building owners and responsible persons require to appoint a suitably competent person to inspect fire doors between private flats and communal areas. And architects, building designers and contractors should take into account the fire safety bill during design and construction as to whether the external wall poses a fire risk to occupants and the upcoming design guidance changes. I hope that was helpful to you. It was quite a lot of information to take in, and the presentation will be made available on the Hydrock website, and we'll send out some links to those who wish to view that again and see that, so that's absolutely fine. Now at this time, I'll take some questions and answers if you have any. Again, if you could just please state your company name and your name and whatever the question is, and we'll try and shout that out as quickly as possible. So let's see what we've got, if there is anything here. As I say, there are a number of Hydrock seminars that are upcoming recently over the next couple of months, and you can check those out at the Hydrock website. So I've got a number of questions, but I don't have any names. Oh, there's some names coming through now. Okay. Is it possible to get a recording? Yes, it is. So, regarding EWS1, RICS have caused an issue with owners not being able to remortgage or sell when the proposal of an EWS1 is not a legislative or legal requirement. Shouldn't RICS stipulate to the market that this should not be used against? I think that must be a typo. Owner. Yes, you're absolutely right. The EWS1 form is not a legislative requirement, but it is an industry recognised practice to assess your external wall system. I think RICS were trying to be helpful, putting that guidance out there to allow people to look at their external wall system to gauge if it poses any potential fire risk, but it's not a legislative requirement. Okay, so John Wild, no company name, stay put policy, great idea, but how can we have the confidence that the building was built correctly and has been correctly maintained, and most critically, it has not been altered in any way during its operational life cycle? That's a great question, and I think, you know, we try to cover that as much as possible. Dame Judith Hackett suggested the golden thread and also the safety case. But you're absolutely right, it's human error in construction that have caused some of these issues. But if we have competent people, competent contractors, third-party inspectors and approvers checking installations throughout the construction phase process, and that's one thing that we have noticed an increase of, is fire engineers being more involved in the construction phase process to ensure that the fire strategy is carried out to completion and that everything is done. Then we hopefully should be able to rely on the compartmentation, which would allow for an effective stay put evacuation strategy. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, this is from Matt from Ridge. Does the RRO amended apply retroactively to existing buildings, even though those not having done work, i.e. if a block of flats has cladding, does a responsible person have a duty to ensure this is changed? So the responsible person has a duty to ensure that cladding does not present a risk. And I think that was made clear in the fire safety bill, that the external wall, including openings, windows, doors and balconies, should be assessed for risk, just like you would do any other fire risk assessment under the regulatory reform order. So I think it does you're saying, does it apply retrospectively? Yes, if you have an occupied building, the regulatory reform order will apply. So that, I mean, that's going to open up a can of worms for a whole host of buildings throughout the UK. Let's have a quick look. When is the fire safety bill likely to come into play? It's currently not passed by Parliament. We'll hopefully get a date fairly soon, so I can't answer that, unfortunately. Let's have a quick look. What? Brilliant, thanks. Sorry, I'm just trying to scroll through some of these comments. Again, it would be very helpful if you could put your name and the company that you're working for, because some of these are coming through as anonymous. Is it compulsory? So this is it compulsory to appoint a fire consultant at design stage? Should there be a qualification you should be looking for? So you'll notice that the REBA stages, the recently published REBA stages, have included fire safety be considered right from design stage. So if you're looking for a competent person to look at that, then yes, I would suggest you appoint a fire engineer right from the start, and they will take you through the design stage process to include fire safety, and also again taking into account the fire safety bill and the upcoming changes as well. I think it would be negligent for any fire engineer who is cognizance of the existing guidance that's there and coming out not to consider it during design stage. So yeah, I would definitely get a fire professional or fire engineer involved at the design stage as well. Okay. Okay. Sorry, there's just again quite a lot, and I'm trying to pick out ones with names and companies. So this is Brad Walker, Fire Safety Manager for Trafford Housing. Hi Brad, thanks for joining us. Do you believe that any person who will manage or carry out fire risk assessments on buildings in scope must be suitably qualified and certified? Absolutely, Brad. I think that it clearly says through MHCLG guidance that you must have a competent person. There are a number of bodies that can prove competency, and just to name one of a few, you have the Institute of Fire Engineers. I would absolutely be looking for proof of competency should you appoint anyone to do a fire risk assessment, because the downside of that is if you do not check the competency or the qualifications that a person has to do a fire risk assessment, the information that they may be giving you may not be suitable and correct. So you should absolutely ensure that you have a qualifier, or check the qualifications and the competencies of the people that you do get to do your fire risk assessments. Okay, let's have a quick look. Gary Neal from Skanska. Hi Gary, do you think the EWS1 form will now mean fire engineer will have to provide a stronger site process and inspections? Absolutely, Gary. I think that's the main point of this, is that the fire engineer, the main contractor, principal contractor, the designers should include the fire engineer right from the start, but also through the construction process. So the fire engineer should be the ones that are checking that everything that has been put into play within the fire strategy. So the fire strategy is the document for the design building, and the fire engineer should be ensuring that the fire strategy is played out throughout the construction process as well, where you've got compartmentation, where you've got cause and effect with fire doors and shutters. So the fire engineer should be the one making sure that all that is put into play through the principal contractor, through the appointment of the principal contractor as well. So yes, there should be definitely more site visits and more site access to the fire engineer. Stuart from an unknown company, are we talking about external fire spread as well on building materials, as well as building materials such as vegetation on external walls of buildings, etc.? Yes, I see vegetation has become very popular in certain cities. You're absolutely right, it should include anything on the external wall that could pose a risk to fire. So any additional attachments or elements, whether it be a plant box or whatever it is you have on there, should be included. Okay. Let's have a quick look. Will HMOs be classed as buildings with two or more dwellings? This is from Mike Jensen and Wilkinson Cowan Partnership. Absolutely. If, I mean, the fire bill clearly stipulated if you have a building with 2 or more dwellings, then yes, that will be considered as applicable under the regulatory reform order. Let's have a quick look. Sorry, these questions are just feeding through as are typed, I think. So, Matt, does the RRO amended apply retrospectively? Oh, we've answered that question. Okay, that's fine. Should the stay put, so this is Steve from Global HSE Solutions, should the stay put policy be repackaged as stay if safe? If the occupant is calling the fire and rescue service for advice on whether to evacuate or should be there? Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, stay put, the wording can seem strange. You know, stay if safe is probably a more apt wording to that evacuation policy, but I mean, it's really down to what the policy actions are, isn't it? So I do believe that the stay put policy is a good policy for high-rise residential buildings, but that is only if, as I say, it meets the criteria for the building design and the fire, there is a limited restriction, sorry, a limited fire risk on the external wall. So yeah, I mean, maybe a change in wording to that name might suffice and bring greater clarity. Steve Burridge from Clark Banks, approved inspectors. Do we know what type of advanced alarm systems are being considered for the future? The answer is no. As I say, the National Fire Chiefs Council are currently doing a consultation, and there's a call for evidence for that at the moment. I do know they would like to consider fire alarms that, as I say, would activate either a specific part of the building or the whole building in its entirety. I hope that answers your question, but we are waiting on a bit more information coming from that, Steve, as well. Okay. Will there be an so this is Dave Sheed from Nottingham Community Housing Association. Will there be an expectation to provide fire-resistant glazing and external walls to provide the necessary protection? I don't think there will be. I mean, obviously it depends on the boundaries to other buildings and an external wall fire assessment, but I don't think there'll be an expectation to put on fire-resistant glazing on a curtain wall system, for example, or fire-resistant glazing within your external wall. It's about the combustibility of your external wall and the products that make up your external wall. So I don't think there'll be an expectation to have fire-resistant glazing throughout every window that makes up an external wall. I hope that's clear, David. Let's have a quick. Sorry, I'm just quickly reading through. So this is Chris Nicholson. The RRO applies to all building types, including bungalows now. I think that's more of a question than a statement. So does it apply to all building types, including bungalows? I mean, if the bungalow has 2 specific dwellings within it, then yes, if someone buys the bungalow and decides to put 2 separate dwellings within that, then yes, it would apply. But I think that answers your question. But if it's just a single dwelling, then no, it wouldn't apply. Mike Valentine from an anonymous company. When are sprinklers required to be in buildings above 11 meters? When does this apply? Sorry, Mike, as said before in the presentation, we're unsure as to when this will actually apply, as to when the new guidance will come out and how that will apply if buildings are currently going through planning application. So I don't have the answer for that. We're currently waiting on the government to give a bit more clarity around that as well. Okay. Okay. Do you think, so this is Ian Sanderson of Glasgow Caledonian University, do you think an invasive inspection of existing flats should be carried out before stay put can be accepted with confidence? It's a good question. I think certainly an inspection of existing flats, I mean, the responsible person under the Article 3 of the RRO should be considering the communal areas of the flats, and the communal areas does include, the walls and the boundaries between the dwellings and the communal areas. So any breaks and compartmentation between those, because as you're well aware, a fire compartment or a flat is designed to be essentially a box, and anything that breaks that compartmentation should be adequately fire sealed. I would like to think that housing associations or anyone responsible for a high-rise residential building is checking fire compartmentation on a regular basis within the communal areas. Okay, there's a few more coming through. Imogen Hunt at Castle Oak Care Partnership. Will the RRO bill apply to care homes and hotels? Yes, it does. The regulatory reform order does apply to care homes and hotels. You should be having a fire risk assessment under the RRO on a regular basis, and that should now include the external wall systems within the RRO. Mike Valentine, Whitehead Building Services. Oh, no question. Okay. So Kayleigh Basher from the Guinness Partnership. Does the new fire safety bill include clearer guidance about the responsibility of leaseholders and how it can be enforced? Whilst we may own the building, leaseholders also have a duty of care, particularly when there are older leases prior to the changes in fire safety. You're absolutely right, Kayleigh. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. It makes it very clear under the RRO, again under Article 3, who the responsible person is. I don't want to quote verbatim, but I'm pretty sure it's any person to which controls any part of the building to any extent is a responsible person. You should go onto the Regulatory Reform Order website and look at Article 3 and identify and define who has responsibilities under that. And those people with responsibilities, because there are a number of buildings that have joint owners or have joint people responsible, those should be working cooperatively and collaboratively between each other to ensure that the fire risk to the residents is as low as reasonably practicable. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure how we are doing for time. We'll take one more if that's okay. Let's have a quick look. Adam Knight from Vinci. Hello, Adam. Are we to assume that the new bill will cover all facade materials, i.e. insulated renders on EPS insulation? Yes, I mean, it states it clear, Adam, it absolutely will cover all materials, regardless of what that material is. I think, again, it comes down to the fire safety professionals, the principal designers and contractors to ensure that the external wall does not pose a fire risk to the occupants within the building. So whatever material it is that you decide to use, if it's under, a certain building height, you have to ensure that that material does not pose a fire risk, regardless of what that material is. And you have to take into consideration windows and doors and openings within that external wall as well. So you do have to consider any material or anything that's been applied to the external wall. Okay, do you know what? I think that is it, if that's okay. That's all we have time for. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. I appreciate it, as does the rest of the Fire Safety Division from Hydrock. You can get my contact details on the Hydrock website. You can also, we have a number of other professionals in fire safety working in Hydrock. Their contact details are on the website as well. Please get in touch. I will respond to any questions. Any questions that you've maybe tried to pass through here that haven't been answered, I mean, I'm happy to answer them if you send them through in an email. That's not a problem at all. There are a number of other webinars coming up on the Hydrock website if you want to check those out and the upcoming dates as well. But again, thank you so much for your time. I hope it's been useful to you, and get in touch if you have or require any other information. Thank you.